We're back with more on our politics lead. Late today, the Trump administration announced it will immediately begin reviewing an interim report on the opioid crisis in this country, prepared by a White House anti-drug commission, which is led by New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. His state, New Jersey, has been hit hard by the heroin epidemic. Earlier today, I asked the governor about the findings and what more needs to be done about this crisis.
What we found, Jake, is 142 Americans are dying every day of drug overdose, every day, which means we have a 9/11 scale loss every 3 weeks in America. So the first recommendation we say to the president is you must declare a national emergency, a public health emergency that will empower your cabinet, the executive branch, and motivate the congressional folks to be able to fund this and to get on top of it, because we have a crisis. Think about that, Jake. Every 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's staggering.
The number of people who die, or the number of people who died on 9/11.
Mostly from opioids?
Mostly 3/4 from opioids.
And is the pattern that they have some sort of health problem, they get opioids, and then they can't afford to stay on it, or the doctors won't continue prescribing, and so they turn to heroin? Is that
4 out of every 5 new heroin addicts in the country today started on prescription opioids? So this problem, Jake, is not happening. It's not starting on our street corners. It's starting in our doctors' offices and hospitals. We prescribed enough opioids in this country in 2015 to have every adult in America fully medicated for 3 weeks. It's out of control, and so one of the recommendations we're making is increased education for our doctors at medical schools and dental schools, and mandatory continuing medical education if you want the DEA license to write these prescriptions. We don't have that now. We need to have that across the country.
Do big pharmaceutical firms need to be penalized if they're pushing these too much? Do doctors who overprescribe need to be punished?
Well, doctors who are overprescribing definitely need to be punished. And pharmaceutical companies, as you probably know, there's lawsuits going on around the country right now regarding this, and I don't want to say too much because New Jersey is a party to one of those lawsuits, but I would just say that there's a lot of responsibility to go around here. But the good news is that we think the president and Congress have tools available to them in working with the states to be able to lessen this crisis significantly. But we have a long way to go. We have a number of recommendations that we'll announce later today with the president, and we hope that the president declares a public health emergency in this country, which will allow us to be very, very aggressive about this problem.
You've worked with law enforcement as a prosecutor, obviously as a governor. Do you share the concern of some police chiefs and police organizations that President Trump was too flippant when describing how suspects should be treated by police when he spoke in Suffolk County on Friday?
Yeah, listen, I don't think that that's what the president really believes. I think sometimes, when the president starts to riff a little bit, as I call it, he's having fun. And because I'm from the same area of the country he is, I can tell when the president's being a little bit sarcastic and a little flippant, and I think he's still getting used to how people will take that from him as president of the United States versus a real estate developer. I don't think the president really believes that. I don't believe he thinks that, police should rough people up. But I think that he makes jokes and is sarcastic, and I think he's still getting used to how that's going to be received when you're president.
Speaking of a certain Northeastern style, you had an exchange with a Cubs fan at a Milwaukee Brewers game yesterday. Let's take a quick look.
What did he say to you?
There was a Secret Service right there.
What did he say?
I don't know. You want to act like a big shot?
It's the tail end of the exchange, obviously. What happened, and do you ever think twice about things like that?
No. Listen, Jake, when somebody swears at you publicly and says some really awful things with a lot of children sitting around and my own son with me, I took it the first time he said it and yelled it from about 15 yards and said some really lousy, awful stuff. And then I came back after having ignored him the first time, and he went in for seconds. Well, if you go in for seconds, I've always said this, whether it was at my town hall meetings or any place else, if you give it, you're going to get it back. And I think that was a very mellow reaction from a New Jersey governor to just say, you're a real big shot, and most of these folks, they think they can say anything they want. Public officials are public servants, but they're not meant to be public punching bags. And I'm at a ball game with my son, enjoying the game, having no interaction with anybody on public policy issues or anything else. I don't think it's the right of anybody to stand up and swear at you and curse you out. And I've gone through this before on the boardwalk and other places, and I've always had the same response. I'll ignore it when it first happens, but if you persist, then you're going to get a reaction.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and good luck with the opioid crisis.
Thank you.
Before we say goodbye to you,